Hello everyone, welcome to our channel The Planner's Way. Myself Rohit. In this video I'm going to cover what's the requirement for the good schedule, what we call the good schedule is, on what basis we judge the schedule, and what basis we can say this schedule is realistic and it can achieve what we are looking for in the real field. Let's begin the video in which I will provide the insights what's the requirement of a good schedule. Let's start Let's start with defining the term what is a good schedule. A good schedule is something which must need to align with the contractual obligation and project management requirements, and it need to reflect the client requirements as well. It need to cover the full scope. In addition to that, a good schedule need to be accurate, it need to be realistic and logical driven, and the most important part is it need to reflect the full project execution strategy in terms of planning, forecasting, and reporting purpose. In the upcoming slide, we will dig in further, like as what we mean by accuracy, what we mean by a schedule is realistic, what's the meaning of logical driven. Let's start with the first one. A good schedule must complete the full scope. It needs to cover the whole scope of the project. We can't miss anything. If there is a scope creep, then we might get problem in the future executions while executing. The duration might not be realistic and we can't complete the project on time. So for that reason, any uncertainties or any scope creep need to be identified in the first place in the discovery phase. So for a schedule, it must need to cover engineering, procurement, construction, the testing things that need to be done, and complete up to the handover. To help to cover the whole scope in a schedule, we need to have the clear work breakdown structure, which need to be properly structured in a hierarchical order, which improves in stakeholder understanding and the control, and we easily recognize for which phase who is responsible of, and the chances of missing the scope are very less if we have the well organized work breakdown structure, and so it is necessary to build a good schedule. In a good schedule, we need to have the proper activity definition. That means we need to have the correct activity types introduced, either if the activity is task dependent or that is LOE or that of the milestones or sometimes the WBS summary that we used to use, it need to be defined over there. And the activities need to be so simple that it could be easier to quantify the durations, and the resources need to introduce on that. The activities are the building block of the schedule, so they need to be measurable and manageable as far as possible. Once we know what the activities need to be kept across the WBS, okay, these are the activities. After that, we can make the durations realistic as much as possible. To put the realistic duration, sometimes we use the help of subject matter experts based upon their experience. So we make sure these durations are reflecting something realistic that we are looking across. And most of the time we can do the manual calculations as well in taking the help of BOQs and that of the resource requirement for that. Sometimes the duration is affected by the resources. We need to take care of those as well. So duration need to be realistic as far as possible for the activities to maintain a good schedule. Once we define up the activities, the second step is to arrange them in the logical order and need to have the realistic linkage. The activities need to be linked with one another with the appropriate relationship type, either it is finish to start, that of start to start, or that of finish to finish. We need to avoid as far as possible the use of the constraints, any open ends in the program. For a good schedule requirement, we have one missing predecessor, which is the project start, and one of the missing successor, which is the project close. Other than that, we need to have a sequential flow of the activities connected with one another. Once we make the correct linkage or the correct logical relationship of the activities between one another, After that, we will get a valid critical path, which means it is the longest path or the minimum duration required to complete the project. In a project, we want to have one critical path so that it could be easy to manage the activities and the critical path, and they are the real driver for the schedule. So we can focus on the critical path than that of the non-critical items. So a good schedule requirement means there should be have a continuous and logical critical path in place. If there is a requirement of the schedule and there from the client side as well, if we need to have the resource loading and cost loading in place, once we define the realistic duration for the activities and link them in the logical order, after getting the critical path, we can place across the resources for them, how much resources are required for each of the, either we can go through the activity level or we can go through the high level. Depending upon the client requirement, we can use the different approach for the resource and cost loading, which helps to detect the resource overrun early. Stay tuned, we'll make a video on regarding the resource loading and cost loading in detail, but here just I want to touch that it helps in early detection of the budget overruns or the cost overruns. Last but not the least, there are many things to cover. Likewise, for a good schedule requirement, we need to have clear dependency on place. There shouldn't be any lead or lag in place. We need to cover for the long lead items. And but here so far we have covered a couple of items which are the basic requirement of the good schedule. And the lastly I want to cover, a good schedule need to have a proper calendar in place. Either it is a 5-day working calendar or that of the 6-day, or we are working on the weekends or not. It need to cover that of the holidays, any bank holidays, and different calendar need to be placed across for that of engineering purpose, for the procurement purpose, and the construction things. So we need to avoid the default using of the calendar blindly and make sure there is a proper calendar in place according to the activity requirements, as the use of the calendar will affect the original duration of the activity. So we need to define a proper working calendar in place at first, and then we can assign it to the individual activities, which calendar we want to assign on what. To summarize what we have learned so far, the question might be asked, what are the characteristics of a good schedule, which is a pretty straightforward question which we have learned here. We can give the example regarding the realistic durations, logical sequencing, valid critical path, that of the resources used, those sort of things over there. The question might be asked, how do you validate a contractor schedule? We can give the insights. Okay, I will look for these particular items to validate whether it's really realistic or not. Giving the example, one of the example we can define or we can elaborate, we can narrate that question around. The third approach might be asked, what makes a critical path realistic? For that we can go through the activity detailing, the WBS hierarchy things, and processing over the realistic duration, and last but not least we can give the example regarding the logical sequencing from that at top to bottom of the schedule. These sort of questions we have covered in this video. The upcoming video in this episode will be on value management. For more insight, please subscribe the Planner's Way. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.